Today we are back at Captain Underpants and the revolting revenge of the radioactive roboxer. At chapter 2, we're gonna read chapter 2 to chapter 8. Let's start. Chapter 2. Let's get serious, folks. Did you ever notice how grown ups hate it when kids are having fun? Seriously? When was the last time adults came over and made you stop? If you are like most kids, you are probably reading this very book because some adult want you to quit playing video games or watching TVs. If you don't believe me, try this experiment. Grab a few of your friends, go into the corner of the room and start goofing around, make some noise, start laughing and cheering, and maybe shout out a woohoo or two. It's been scientifically proven that 89.4% of all grown-ups will drop whatever they are doing and rush over to pull a stop to whatever nonsense you're up to. You have to wonder, why are most grown-ups like this? Weren't they ever kids themselves? Didn't they enjoy laughing and cheering and goofing around when they were young? If so, when did they stop and why? Now I suddenly can't speak for all adults, but I am going to anyway. I think it's a lot easier for adults to stomp out someone else's fun than it is for them to reflect on their own lives and figure out where it all went so miserably wrong. It's just too depressing for grown-ups to ponder all the decades of compromise, failures, laziness, fear, and regretment choices that slowly transform them from running, jumping, laughing, fun-loving kids into grumpy, complaining, calorie counting, easily offended, peace and quiet, demanding, grouchy. In another word, it's harder to look within yourself than it is to shout, "Hey, you kids, cut that out!" Keeping this in mind, you might not want to smile or laugh while reading this book, and when you get to the fliporama part, I suggest you flip with a more disinterested look on your face, or some adult will probably take this book away from you and make you read Sarah Plain and Tall instead. Don't say I didn't warn you. Chapter 3. Chapter 3. TP return again. TP Tinkle Trouser was in big trouble. He had zapped himself back in 5 years and accidentally frightened 4 bullies. This thoughtless mistake set in motion a series of events that ultimately got Mr. Crow fired. And since there was no Mr. Crow, there was no Captain Underpants. And since there was no Captain Underpants, there was nobody to save the world from the terrible the Wesson caused by the villain from our first three epic novels. TB decided there was only one thing to do: go back in time and stop himself from scaring those bullies. But in order to do this, he would have to go back in time before the last time he had gone back in time. So Tippy set his tinkle time travel meter for 10 minutes before the last time he had arrived in the past and pressed the away we go button. After several seconds of made for television style special effects, Tippy found himself transported to the awful night of the terrifying thunderstorm. Everything looked very familiar. He knew that at any moment the four bullies would come running from the school and tear across the football field. Then they would come face to face with him, while a slightly younger version of him, and only he could stop it all from happening. TP hid behind the side of the school and waited as the wind howled furiously. Suddenly, a brilliant flash of lightning struck a nearby power line, and electricity in the school went out, and all the windows became dark. TB listened closely and heard the sounds of squeaking and slapping and shuffling. It sounded as if a terrible struggle was taking place inside the school. Then suddenly the back door of the school crashed open, and the four terrified bullies stopped their way outside. Quickly they darted toward the football field. This was Tippy's big chance. He aimed his Freezy Beam 4000 at the ready distant quintins and zapped them all with a mini mountain of molecularly modified ice. The four bullies were frozen in place. Tippy screened the boys with his life system monitor and found them to be perfectly preserved. The carbonate and Tabana gas inflows ice had been programmed to remain solid for 15 minutes, just long enough for Tippy to do this thing quickly. Tippy turned toward the football field where the ball of blue light lightning was growing bigger and bigger. Suddenly, it exploded in a blinding flash. And there where the ball of lightning had been was a giant pair of robotic hands. Boy, That was a close one, said a voice from inside the depths of the newly arrived robopants. Captain Underpants is a lot stronger than I thought. The zipper of the newly arrived robotic trouser opened and a tiny man peeked out to marvel and the world of 5 years ago. But to his surprise, he saw an identical copy of himself staring straight at him and tapping his gigantic robo foot impatiently. "Who are you?" asked the newly arrived Tippy. "I'm you," shouted future Tippy. "You from the future." "What's going on?" asked Tippy. "I'm here to stop you from scaring those kids over there," said future Tippy, pointing at the frozen bullies. "Why?" said Tippy. "What's so important about those kids?" "I have no idea," said future Tippy. "All I know is I scared those kids when I came back here last time, and apparently it caused a chain reaction that resulted in the total destruction of the earth, more or less." "I see," said Tippy. "So what do we do now?" Future Tippy looked at his watch. "Those kids are going to thaw out in 18 minutes and 11 seconds, he said. "We have got to be gone by then." So he reached into the cockpit of his robo pants and grabbed one of his very first invention, the Shrinky Pig 2000 Tippy, aimed it at the younger version of himself and pressed the button. A powerful beam of energy blasted the newly arrived Tippy Tinkle trouser and his gigantic pair of robo pants and shrunk them down to the size of a baseball. Big Tippy reached down and picked up the tiny version of himself. "What did you do that for?" shouted Tiny Tippy. "I can't very well have two of us running around," said Big Tippy. "I have got to keep an eye on you." Big Tippy tucked Tiny Tippy into his jacket pocket and checked his watch again. 4 minutes and 16 seconds, he muttered to himself. He looked over at the four bullies encased in the now cracking ice travelometer and programmed it for a date. In the future, time was running out. The ice around the bullies was disintegrating fast, so Tippy slinked away to the center of town, pressed his "Away we go" button, and disappeared into a ball of lightning. 2 seconds later, the ice mountain that had encased and preserved the bullies disintegrated completely without skipping a beat. The four frightened friends continued their mad dash away from the school. As they ran around the football field toward their homes, something about Kiefer and his friends changed forever. They would never get be the same despicable bullies they once were. Chapter 4, Fixing the Future. Big TV had set his tinkle time travel meter of a sunny afternoon in October 4 years in the future. He arrived as usually in a giant ball of blue lightning that grew bigger and bigger until it exploded in a blinding flash. What's going on out there? Cried Tiny Tippy. I can't see a thing. Sus Big TV as he shoved Tiny Tippy down into the deep, darkened, darkened, darkened depth of his jacket pocket. Big Tippy listened carefully. He heard the voice of a children muttering. This can't be good. Tippy unzipped the zipper of his robo pants and peeked out. To his delight, the world looked like it usually did. No destruction, no giant zombie nerds, no moon rock. Everything seems pretty normal. Hey, it's Professor Poopy Pants! Shouted a small voice Mom Tippy recognized immediately. Suddenly, two cops standing nearby started to laugh with anger. Tippy, stop laughing, shouted Tippy. My name is no longer Professor Poopy Pants. I chanted into Tippy Tinkle Trouser. The two cops laughed even harder. And I have got a special surprise for anybody who thinks my new name is funny, said the furious professor. Tippy pressed the button on his freezy beam 4000, causing it to rise from the deep of his robe pants. He set the freeze ray for 20 minutes and zapped the cops, transforming them into frozen statue. My freezy beam 4000 will take care of anybody who stands in my way, said Tippy. And now, he said with a wicked smile, it's time for my revenge. Oh no! Screamed George. Here we go again! Screamed Harold. Tippy chased George and Harold and their two pets, Sulu and Cracker, through town, zapping his freezy beam 4000 at them and laughing maniacally. The chase lasted all afternoon and into the night. The four friends hid behind buildings, inside trash bins, under bridge, and even down in the sewer. But it didn't matter where they sought refuge because Tippy Tinkle always found them. By the morning of the next day, our heroes had found a hiding place behind some bushes near the park. What are we going to do? Whispered George. There's nowhere else to hide. I don't know, whispered Harold. George and Harold looked at their two pets, shivering with them in the morning mist. We are not going to make it, whispered George, but there's no reason that Sulu and Cracker should have to suffer. Harold's eyes began to water. You are right, he whispered. George and Harold petted their two friends. Sadly, as they devised a plan to return to the dinosaur age, we could use the purple potty to take Cracker back home where we found him, said George. Yeah, said Harold, and Sulu could stay there with him. They will both be safe there. As soon as it was clear, the four friends sneaked away from the bushes and headed for Jerome Harvest Elementary School, carefully avoiding Mere Street and intersection. It was almost noon by the time George and Harold and their two pets reached the school. Cautiously, they sneaked through the front door and dashed up the stairs to the library. Hey, Bubbles, shouted Mr. Crab angrily. Where have you kids been? George and Harold looked down and saw Mr. Crab carrying a large cardboard box. Well, Mr. Crab shouted, get down here and explain yourselves. George and Harold looked at their two pets and continued running up the stairs. Mr. Crab was furious. His day hadn't started out very well. For some strange reason, all the red curtains in his office had disappearing, and he wasn't happy about it. So Mr. Crab had driven angrily to the store, brought a replacement box of curtains, started a big fight with the cashier, got a flat tire on the way home, and now this is his friends. Students were bringing animals into the school, ignoring the command and running up the stairs. You kids, you kids, get back here! Shouted Mr. Crab as he chased after the four frightened friends. George and Harold and Cracker and Sulu raced to the top of the stairs, dashed into the library, and locked the door behind them. They behind the old troublesome enormous the purple potty. It was homemade time machine that had a few quirks, to say the least, and our heroes approached it constantly. Do you still remember how to use this thing? Asked Harold. Of course, said George. We just used it yesterday morning. All I have to do is set the controller for 65 million years ago, then pulled down one of the chain. Easy squeaky, mac and cheesy. Suddenly, Mr. Crab reached the library door and struggled with the locked doorknob. The boys heard a shuffling sound followed by the jingling of keys. Let's boogie! Cried George. The four friends climbed into the purple potty, and George closed the door. At the very moment Mr. Crab came crashing through the library door with his box of red curtains, he ran to the purple potty and banged on the door. I know you are in there, screamed. You can't hide from me forever. Hurry, cried Harold as George finally with the controller. We have got to get out of here. I'm working as fast as I can, cried George. Suddenly, a gigantic dark shadow filled the library. Mr. Crow turned to see a huge robotic pair of trousers at the window. The zipper unzipped and Tippy Tinklechatter peeked through the cavernous opening. I have got you now, he shouted. Ha ha ha! Tippy reached for the button on his Reezy Beam 4000 as Mr. Crab covered it to Tory. At that very moment, George finished setting the controller for 65 million years ago. Then he pulled down one of the chains. All at once, there was a brilliant flash of green light, and the purple party, along with Mr. Crab and his cardboard box, disappeared into a whirlwind of electrified ozone. Chapter 5, Tiny Tippy Tremendous Stacks. Rats! Screamed Tippy as he watched the purple party disappear. Those kids have a time machine and I don't know where they went. What's going on? Cried Tiny Tippy from the depth of Big Tippy's pocket. I can't see a thing. Those kids took off in a time machine. Big Tippy barked at the miniature version of himself, and they took Captain Underpants with them. Where did they go? Asked Tiny Tippy. How should I know? Big Tippy yelled. Hey, I have got an idea, said Tiny Tippy. Why don't I go back in time and fill out? Good idea, me, said Big Tippy. He reached down and placed Tiny Tippy in the library. You go back in time 10 minutes and listen to everything they say. Then when I show up, tell me where they went. You got it, said Tiny Tippy. He set his tinkle time travel meter for 10 minutes ago, and in a blue cracking sling instead instant he was gone. Tiny Tippy arrived in the same spot he had left, only was now 10 minutes earlier. He heard some people running up the stairs, so he decided to hide behind a trash can. Suddenly, George, Harold, and their two pets dashed into the room and locked the door behind them. Tiny Tippy watched as the boy tiptoed toward the tall time traveling toilet. Do you still remember how to use this? Asked Harold. Of course, said George. We just used it yesterday morning. All I have to do is set the controller for 65 million years ago, and then pull down on the chain. Easy squeezy mac and cheesy. Aha! Muttered Tiny TP. They are going back in time to Miso Zurich. Tiny TP watched as the four friends climbed into the time machine and closed the door. He saw Mr. Crab crash through the library door and bang on the lavender lavatory. Then he saw himself, the big version of himself. That that is appeared at the window. I have got you now, shouted Big TB. Ha ha ha! Suddenly there was a brilliant flash of green light, and the purple potty, along with Mr. Crab and his cardboard box, disappeared into a whirlwind of electrified ozone. Rats! Screamed Tippy as he watched the purple potty disappear. Those kids have a time machine, and I don't know where they went. I do, said Tiny Tippy as he stepped out from behind the garbage can. Who are you? Asked Big Tippy. I'm Tiny Tippy, said Tiny Tippy. That's impossible, said Big Tippy. Tiny Tippy is right here. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the miniature version of himself who had been complaining because he couldn't see a thing. I am 10 minutes older than that guy, said Tiny Tippy. You sent me back in time so I could find out where those kids went to. Oh, I get it, said Big Tippy. Good idea, me. So, where would they go? They went backward in time to 65 million years ago, said Tiny Tippy. Aha, said Big Tippy, and slightly younger Tiny Tippy to themselves. Similarly, they are going back in time to the Mesozoic. Big Tippy picked up Tiny Tippy and shoved himself into the pocket next to slightly younger Tiny Tippy. Let's all go back to the dinosaur age. So if I, if we time it right, we can get there just before the purple potty arrives. Chapter 6. 65 million years ago, the primitive midday sky Leads up with several blinding flashes as the purple party suddenly appeared in the top of an ancient tree. George and Harold had successfully brought Cracker back to where they had found him, but when they opened the door of Purple Party, they discovered they would also brought a stowaway. What the heck is going on here? Cried Mr. Crab as he hung from a branch high up in the treetop. Oh no! Cried George. Mr. Crab must have been standing too close to the purple party when we stepped backward in time. He got zapped back with us. Harold reached out his hand to grab hold of Mr. Crab. How could things get any worse? He asked. Suddenly, the tree started to say boom. Boom, boom, boom! Went the tree. George and Harold looked down and saw Tippy gigantic robo pants kicking the side of the tree. What he's doing here? Cried Harold. I don't know, said George, but I think we are about to fall. The horrible kicking continued, and the tree shook wildly. Finally, the purple party slid sideways to and toppled over where doomed screamed herald as they all fell. The purple party cracked and split up apart as it tumbled down the side of the tree. Mr. Crab fell to smoking against every branches. On the way down, suddenly the purple party hit the ground with a terrible crash and broke apart. Mr. Crab hit the ground too, but was surprised he find out that he wasn't hurt a bit. Big TV kicked through the wreckage of the purple party, but could not have thought find any trees of George and Harold or their two pets. Where did they go? He asked. Looked up there, cried the two tiny Tippy who were peeking out of the big Tippy's pocket. Cracker had grabbed George and Harold, and Sue had the last second. A good boy, Cracker, cried George. You saved us. Not for long, screamed Big Tippy as he peered peevishly off a porthole of on top of his robo pants. George and Harold looked down at Mr. Crab, who was still trying to figure out how he would 60 feet and not gotten hurt. The two boys snapped their fingers Suddenly, a welcome smile sprayed across Mr. Crab's face. Immediately, he pulled off his shoes and socks. Then he unclipped his tie and ripped off his shirt. He grabbed a red curtain from the cardboard box beside him and tied it around his neck. As he wiggled out of his pants, Captain Underpants was back and Tippy Tinkle Trouser and his two tiny twins were in for a fight for their lives. Chapter 7. Two Tiny Traders. George and Harold ran through the thick jungle foliage with Cracker and Zulu flying above them. Captain Underpants decided to tag along too, just for fun. Big Tippy jumped onto the back of a nearby Tyrannosaurus Rex and chased after them. "You can't run forever!" shouted Big Tippy. "When I catch you guys, I'm gonna tear you apart. "Can we help?" asked the two tiny tippies, who were tucked away in Big Tippy's jacket pocket. "No!" yelled Big Tippy sternly. "You two keep quiet while I take care of business. This is a job for a man, not two little trips like you." As the chase continued, the two tiny tippies grumbled to themselves. "Boy, I am getting tired of the giant jerk bossing us around," said Tiny Tippy. "Me too," said slightly younger Tiny Tippy. "He thinks he's such a big shot just because he's huge. I sure wish I still get the Goosey Grow 4000, said Tiny Tippy. "Then I could make myself big again." "I was just thinking the same thing," said slightly younger Tiny Tippy, "but unfortunately we stored the Goosey Grow 4000 in the top half of our robo suit, and Captain Underpants destroyed it back in Chapter 8 of our last epic novel." "Hey!" cried Tiny Tippy, "why don't we go back, I mean forward in time to Chapter 8 for our last epic novel? We could grab the Goosey Grow 4000 and make ourselves gigantic." "I like the way you think me," said slightly younger Tiny Tippy. "So, well, Big Tippy chased everybody through the treacherous jungle of their Tinkle Time travel meter for the night of the big battle from Chapter 8, our last epic novel." Big TV was so engrossed in his pursuit of our heroes, he didn't even notice the teensy weensy blue sparks of flashing light emanating from his pocket as his two deepest doppelgangers disappeared in a woof of primeval troposphere. Chapter 8. We're gonna read chapter 8 in our next part 3 of Captain Underpants and the Revolting Revenge of the Radioactive Robo. Bye everyone!